Hi everyone. Today we're going to be looking at a brand new type of function that is called the greatest integer function. But before we get into the function itself, let's look at what is meant by the greatest integer of a number. So in your notebook, please put today's subtitle, which is the greatest integer of a number. The greatest integer of any number is the following definition. The greatest integer of any number, let's say x, is the biggest integer. Don't forget what an integer is. It means whole numbers only. That is less than or equal to x. The notation for the greatest integer of x is the following. It's written with two square brackets, and the value of x is in between the two square brackets. And the two square brackets do not mean the same as the interval square brackets. Now, the easiest way to understand what this definition is telling you is through a few easy examples. So I'd like you to put example. Now, suppose I gave you the following. I wanted to know what is the greatest integer of the number 3.4. Now, according to the definition, I'm looking for an integer, the biggest one possible, that is either less than or equal to 3.4. Now, don't forget, integers mean whole numbers only. So which whole number comes closest to 3.4 without going over 3.4? Well, the number 3 comes closest to 3.4. It's an integer because it's a whole number, and it's less than 3.4. Let's take a look at another example. Suppose I asked you, what was the greatest integer of the number 3.7? Again, ask yourself, which whole number comes closest to 3.7 without going over 3.7? Well, that would be 3 again. Let's try another example. Same question. What is the greatest integer of the number 3? So ask yourself, which whole number comes closest to 3 without going over 3? Well, that would be the number 3 itself. According to the definition, it could also equal to the number inside the bracket. Let's try another one. Same question. What's the greatest integer of the number -2? So which whole number comes closest to -2 without going over -2? Well, that would be -2 itself. Let's keep going. Let's try another one. Same question. What's the greatest integer of the number -2.2? Think hard about this one. What's the biggest whole number that comes closest to -2.2 without going over 2.2? Now, by instinct, you might think -2. But if you think about how negative numbers work, -2 is in fact bigger than -2.2. When you talk about the negative numbers, the closest integer that comes closest to -2.2 without going over -2.2 is actually -3. So you got to really know your negative numbers. Let's try more. How about this one? What is the greatest integer that comes closest to the number pi without going over pi? I believe that would be the number 3. Remember, pi is around 3.14, and the closest whole number that comes to 3.14 is 3. So, if you can look at the pattern here, the greatest integer of any number is basically rounding down. Take a look at the rounding down. Take a look at the 3.4. That rounds down to 3. Take a look at the 3.7. That rounds down to 3. Take a look at the negative 2.2. That rounds down to negative 3. Take a look at the greatest integer of pi. Pi is around 3.14, and when you round that down, it becomes 3. So the easiest way to think about the greatest integer of a number is to think about rounding the number down to the next closest integer. And that is what is meant by the greatest integer of a number.